Hello everyone, I'm Rich Noonan for Eaton Academy. Thanks so much for visiting our in-depth page. In this segment, we hear from Eaton parents, 3 of them, about their experiences and how their children have thrived at Eaton Academy.
Well, I think one of the hardest things that my husband and I ever went through was hearing the diagnosis, was hearing that that Nicholas was going to have challenges, had challenges and would likely have some challenges for the rest of his life. And I think the biggest issue is to get as informed and as educated as you possibly can on everything around that diagnosis. But the next step is to find a safe landing or a soft landing for your child. And we really found that at Eaton. It was a difficult transition because our son didn't want to leave his previous school, and that was a difficult transition for him to make. But honestly, what we told him is, hey, Eaton Academy, you've got 2 cousins here, and you have to have your own computer, and that sold him immediately. So that was the transition we needed. But the benefit of Eaton in terms of the extremely small class size and in terms of the individualized attention that you get is that everyone in this community knows you, knows your family, knows the warning signs if something is a little bit off with your child that day, knows how to interact. I can give you 2 great examples. The very first day that Nicholas came to Eaton, he was standing in his room, in his classroom, and I happened to come in. And the teacher said, Mrs. Rice, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. She said, I want you to know Nicholas had a little bit of difficulty packing his backpack. He was a little bit anxious because he couldn't figure out how to fit everything into his backpack. And I said, oh, okay. And so she said, I would just suggest that night you go home and you go through a routine with him and make sure that everything has its place in his backpack. What a simple solution, right? So we went home and we figured out exactly how to pack that backpack so there was never a moment of anxiety after that. Now, if this had happened in the other school, it would have been something like, come on, pack up your backpack. What are you doing? Why are you taking so long? There wouldn't have been that level of understanding to just take a baby step back and say, you know what? I'm going to talk to your mom about this. You guys can figure this out tonight. And it made all the difference in the world. The second example was that I was talking to Nicholas's teacher in front of him, and he became uncomfortable, and you could tell. And the teacher looked at him immediately and looked at me and said, you know what? We're going to talk about this a little bit later. And she turned around and said, you know what, buddy? We're going to talk about this later with your mommy. Don't worry about it. Again, 2 very small examples, but I mean exactly what Eaton is about. Recognizing where the child is, where the parent is, working with both of them so that you partner together to figure out the best way to approach your child and so that he can have a successful day at school and a successful year at school. At Nicholas's previous school, the environment really wasn't conducive for him to really focus on the academics and for him to be challenged in the areas that he needed to be challenged in. He was constantly trying to get through some of the social challenges or some of the difficulties of just kind of day-to-day school that don't come as easily to him, day-to-day social interactions that don't come as easily to him. And here at Eaton, those distractions are really removed, and he's able to focus completely on the academic challenges. And if some kind of social situation that he has difficulty with comes up, then the teachers are trained and have the time, because the class size is so small, to deal with that immediately and interact with Nicholas exactly how he needs to be interacted with at that moment. And that's not just for my child, but for every child in the class. So we looked at schools all across Atlanta, some with 1.5-hour long commutes. Thank goodness none of those worked out. But what we found is many of them would embrace social differences, but they were never academically challenging enough for Nicholas. And that's something that he really needs to keep his mind engaged. I mean, he's just, socially he's a little bit behind the curve, but academically, I mean, he's well ahead of where he should be in his grade. He loves school. He loves school. I can barely, we just went to Disney World last weekend and he was beside himself that he would miss 1 day of school. In some ways, I think it's important that we all had the experience that we did at the other schools. I mean, it's a very difficult situation to have your second grader bullied in the bathroom, because of something he's wearing, far away from the eyes of teachers, and that was a difficult experience. But in some ways, I think we all needed to go through that to really fully appreciate how wonderful Eaton is and the kind of environment that they've created at this school.
Eaton embraced him and was very generous of spirit with him. And the great part of the environment that he came to was the small classes. So he had to wrestle with two things. Number one, he has to learn, but the other thing was he can't interfere with the other kids. And it took some time, some head banging, I think, by the teachers, knocking their heads against the wall and knocking Benjamin's head, metaphorically, to get that, to get him to understand, we're part of a family here. And so he did begin to understand that. I think until then, he's just a kid, 13, 12, 11 years old, very hard to control impulses. And he finally began to get his impulses under control. Teachers were incredibly understanding of him. The light went on after he got here. At some point, he began to see, it's not just me here, there's other people. And he had gone through some tough times at other schools. And I think he understood, whether he'll ever admit it or not, I think he understands sometimes it's not easy being a part of a school community with other kids. That's one of the benefits I think we've found at Eaton was the flexibility of the school at finding classes for him that will get him ready for school. He's taken calculus this year, he's had physics, chemistry, biology, all the sciences, English of course for all the 4 years. And he has thrived, actually improved every year. His performance academically has gotten better. And he looks like, at least in his mind, he feels like he's ready. And I think that's 3/4 of the battle anyway, walking in to college. But the flexibility was very important for us because what we've seen is that although the teachers are moving the classes along as a group, together, all the kids together, they will let him enrich his curriculum on the side. And that was important to us. If that couldn't be done, we would have had to revisit the decision. The English curriculum has really helped him focus and dig into, when I read a book, it's not just the words on the page, but usually there's a message. Find out what that message is, see what you can do with it, and build on it. It's been a good experience for us because he needed to have the attention. He needed somebody who was there who could direct him quickly and not punish him for going off in the wrong direction. And that is what my daughter has experienced in public school, or personally, and has seen it, of course, where teachers say, oh, you're talking, why don't you go sit in the corner and sit as far away from the action as possible. Whereas here, it's a lot more reinforcing. And it's almost, I wouldn't say therapeutic, but it's along the lines of trying to redirect and point people in a positive direction. Negative reinforcement is not a methodology here. It's been a really great to see what he is now compared to what he was 3.5 years ago. It is eye-opening. It is absolutely shocking that I'm looking, this is my son, and this is the same child we brought. He's not a child anymore, he's a young man. And his maturity level, his yearning to learn are just things we did not expect or hope for. They're just shockers. I think it was the pivotal moment for Benjamin. The struggles he had before coming here were heart-wrenching for us. And I'd go to work, the phone would ring, it was the school calling. There's a problem, come get your son, or we have to have a conference. And it was almost like I was conditioned. When the phone rang, it was bad news. That was a big problem for him, and it was a big problem at home as a result because he was not getting it, and we were getting it, and it was something he needed to understand. And we came here, and he understood. I wouldn't say, this was, the last stop on the train for him, but he understood he needed to begin to accept what he's being told. He needs to begin to grow, and he did, fortunately. But he had a lot of help. The teachers were really important to that element for him, understanding and being positive and giving him a little more slack, and that's all he needed, was just a little more slack.
Ironically, I came in to interview them for my son to go to school here, and started talking to them, and I just fell in love with the program here, and saw it from a teacher's eyes, and decided, you know what, how about both of us at the same time? And they happened to have an opening, and so actually day one we started together. But my pull was for him. I didn't even think about teaching here beforehand. That wasn't even a thought in my mind. My own child goes to school here. I chose this school for him because I felt like it was the best environment for him. And he started here in, let's see, 6th grade, and he's a senior this year. So he's been here a long time. And I, as a parent, I'm just thrilled with the program and the variety of programs that this school offers.